All right, Entombed Valley is the map. We are in game right now. I love the Gauntlet graphic, as we've already mentioned a couple of times. And here we go, down in the bottom right-hand corner of Entombed. It is the Protoss player that Kev was talking up in such a big way. It is Crank.
Slayer's Crank, of course.
And his opponent up here in the top right, the red Protoss, Hwangsin.
This is Entombed Valley, and I told you guys I will tell you what I know about PvP on this map. That is that it's without a doubt one of the worst pure Blink Stalker maps out there, unless you're sort of trying to get into the how do you say that? Psychological. Man, I
trying to psych out your opponent, get inside his head?
Yes, yeah, when you try to get inside of his head and you think that he might try to counter, actually we're just going to small update from our producer, and that is that it's twitter.com/gosu Hwangsin. So if you want to tell him, guys, that you love him, that you enjoy his Protoss play,
please go tweet at Hwangsin and tell him that you don't think he's cheesy, you think he's awesome, and you love him.
Exactly.
Twitter.com/gosu Hwangsin. Go ahead, Kev.
Yeah, what I was trying to say is that when you feel that your opponent perhaps wants to play Phoenix, because Phoenix is very good against most robo builds, unless it's a very quick expand. But even then, Phoenix will still be nice to contain, pick off probes, and most of the time, eventually you'll still get ahead. But of course, Blink Stalkers are very good against Phoenix, and they can actually drop a super quick expand, and you won't lose a lot of probes. But in most cases, Ben, you're going to see robo play on this map.
Yeah, and that's of course because it's a pretty compact 2 bases. It's really easy to do something like an Immortal Expand here, and very difficult to attack into any kind of opening.
Because there's of course a ramp over here as well, so you won't have any high ground vision with your Blink Stalkers, and well, the main base is almost impossible to enter, because if the army stands here, you pretty much cover everything. You don't want to go from here to here, because even if the army stands here, it's still so close, and if there are 2 or 3 sentries and there are 2 or 3 Immortals, force fields go off, and you're bound to lose a few Stalkers. And Stalkers are expensive units. People sometimes underestimate how expensive Stalkers are.
Almost as expensive as a Roach?
Yeah, funny. 2 Stalkers are the same as 1 Immortal, though. I don't think many people would see it like that, but it's exactly true.
They definitely don't fight that way.
No, no, not against roaches.
All right, so pretty similar openings on both sides. Hwangsin taking a slightly faster second gas, and Crank instead getting a faster second gateway. So he is going to go Zealot first, and then maybe Stalker. What is this, Kev?
Yeah, Hwangsin scouted, but he had like sort of the most weird and unfortunate scout ever. He somehow did not see that Crank spawned over here in the right bottom. He's going to be so confused. This is, man, from now on I'm always going to build my buildings over here on N2. This makes Crank look so smart. Crank got a probe into the main base. I think Hwangsin is realizing what's going on after the probe arrived at his base.
Hwangsin realizing what's up. This isn't going to hurt him too bad. There's only these Zealots, and I think the probe could sneak past.
It's double gate opening over here from Crank, though.
Going to, so.
This opening has becoming more popular. You get 2 Zealots instead of 1, and then you can actually get pretty quick, well, 2 and of course 4 Stalkers as well, even before most of the time Warp Gate is ready from your opponent. We see gates going up, as pylon going up over here as well, Ben.
Very interesting. So could be some commitment to aggression. Could just be 2-gate aggression, which is not not bad either, Kev. Hwangsin, however, is really behind in production, though.
One of those ugly things. 4 probes on 1 simulator, and that's perhaps not the biggest deal in the world, but when you only have 23 workers, that is actually quite a big deal, so it's a little bit sloppy by Crank.
He caught it and fixed it right as you said it. So excellent job, Crank, by being attentive there. Hwangsin's going to see these Zealots in.
Oh, he's taking a lot of hits. Actually, he really wants to take out that probe, but I'm not sure if that was worth it. He has 1 sentry, and the second sentry's on the way. Nice force field, but keep your Stalkers alive, Hwangsin.
And he will keep his Stalkers alive with some nice micro. Needs another sentry, though, Kev. There's not a pylon in range for a high ground warpin, but there are still, he's still got these 2 gates to fall back on. He's going 2-gate robo, so this is not any sort of 4-gate. He's just trying to force Hwangsin to panic a little.
Wow. Baited the force field there. I think Hwangsin is actually going to panic right now. He's like, oh god, I just used my only force field. He's chrono boosting out an observer, so I guess he's not all that worried.
Yeah, he's not even chrono boosting his warp gate.
Yeah. And realizing that this is not full-on aggression from Crank. Crank's going to try to make something happen now with 2 Zealots and 3 Stalkers, and this might actually still work.
We are going to get a couple of Stalkers warped in here. Hwangsin's going to have to micro very well. Loses a Stalker, loses a sentry.
Crank is doing this so well. Crank still didn't lose a single Stalker. This Zealot is being a really big... Oh my god, Crank is actually doing this so extremely good.
Absolutely, he's doing a great job. Hwangsin kind of bobbling a little bit. finally deals with the Zealot, but still has 3 Stalkers in his base, and he's going to lose more units here, Kev.
Wow, look at the micro of Crank. He's finally going to end up... Oh, the Immortal!
Boom! Boom!
Okay. Well, that was perfect play by Crank for a very long time. Perhaps small overcommitment going all the way over here just to pick off that single Stalker. But Crank did that very good for a long time. And Hwangsin made a minor micro mistake. That is when he was microing this Sentry way. He started to run with this Stalker as well. And that was really not necessary because he needed that Stalker to deal with the other Stalkers.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it actually works out okay. Yeah. For Hwangsin. His Nexus will be a little bit slower, but if you look at resources lost, he comes out very, very slightly ahead. This is still an almost completely even game. Worker count, only 2 probes separate these 2 guys, and it's actually Hwangsin with the advantage there. But again, the Nexus for Crank is going to be done a little bit faster.
Well, Hwangsin is having an Observer in a defensive way. He knows that the Observer of Crank is here somewhere. I think these Stalkers will be able to get a few shots off, but eventually there should be a magic spot for this Observer.
No, he's at the corner of the map, Kev. There's no escape for that Observer. Crank is going to lose it. And that is
a pretty big loss. And immediately Hwangsin drops the robotics facility, robotics bay.
Man, that's a painful loss. That Observer is so important. But Crank is still just going to sit back. He's going to chrono boost out a new Observer.
Yeah, it's not just the fact that having an Observer makes you feel safer. It's just when you see what your opponent is doing, you can see what he spends his chrono boost on. The moment you lose your Observer, you know you're going to be absolutely in the dark. There's no way you're going to sacrifice units at this stage. You want to be careful with every single unit. So the moment you can't see what's really going on, you're going to have to be worried. And of course, producing another Observer delays your eventual Colossus, or at least minor or lowers the Immortal count.
Observer of Hwangsin is going to sneak in here, spots the expansion, knows that he's a little bit behind in that regard. And in the time that Crank has had double Nexus, he has created an 8-worker lead for himself. So that was nicely done there by Crank. Hwangsin's robotics bay, as you pointed out, Kevin, was a little bit faster. Crank's is only about halfway done. So Hwangsin will have, at least for the time being, an advantage in the Colossus count. Yeah,
but the worker count is heavily in favor of Crank, though. 41 against 33. That's a pretty big difference in PvP. So that means that if Hwangsin is not going to try to hit a timing with perhaps 2 Colossus against 1 Colossus, and he's going to have Turbo Lance, well, maybe his opponent won't have it, I think he's going to be in a little bit of trouble eventually if he just sits back. But we'll see.
What is the best way to come back in this position, in your opinion?
From Hwangsin, in my opinion, he should just make 2 Colossus and go for it. Which is risky because it's always hard to attack in PvP. Because even when you have the Colossus advantage, by the time you cross the map, you always warp in a pylon, you wait for that additional warp in. By the time you walk here, that Colossus advantage is almost gone. And then, of course, Crank is going to have the advantage of being the defending player. So he can spread his army a little bit better.
Hwangsin did scout that robotics base, so he's got an idea of the timing on Crank's own Colossi, but I really have a hard time believing that he would ever have a Colossus advantage in a fight. I think by the time he got across the map, it would be even numbers.
But and that's still, I think, the best chance he's going to have. Even though Crank has not been making pros for quite a while, and Hwangsin has. So actually, right now, Hwangsin doesn't really have to make something happen anymore. We did see Crank warp in a lot of gates, so maybe Crank is actually going to be the player who's going to try to make something happen on 2 base.
Going to catch another Observer. Nicely done there.
Ooh, missed it.
Keeping Crank in the dark even still. So this could be one of the reasons that we're seeing Crank play perhaps so passively. Man, he has got so many Zealots right now. Obviously, investing all of his gas into this Colossus tech means that he's only really got minerals left over.
He has a minor army advantage. He's 58 against 49 right now, but I have a hard time believing that he can just attack Hwangsin. Even though, I mean, the advantage is good, but if Hwangsin spreads well, and even force fields can be very crucial against this amount of Zealots.
It's going to be a 3rd Colossus, too. We're going to see it's all going to come down to the engagement, but I can't really see Crank going up this ramp and winning the fight. Don't get your force field.
With all the Zealots, man, it is possible. This is actually quite crazy, but we have 19 Zealots against 7. Yes, we have 3 Colossus, but the force fields are going to have to be really good for Hwangsin.
Crank is going to go for it, and here we go. Zealots are coming forward, and they're going to crash into those Zealots of Hwangsin first, and actually Crank is going to just power right through here, and that Zealot count is making all the difference. Immortal's tanking some damage, but I'm not sure if it's going to be enough pros being pulled, but there are force fields in the way.
Still 3 Colossus alive, though, and 1 Immortal. Well, that Immortal is going to fall right now for Hwangsin, and Hwangsin is just going to lose everything. Pretty sick read on the game over here by Crank, despite losing those Observers, having such excellent PvP knowledge of realizing when he can take a fight and when he can't.
Crank takes out Hwangsin claims the gauntlet, Kev.
Man, Crank is hitting on some really crazy crucial timing over there, because for the moment where I felt that Hwangsin was going to have to be the one to hit the timing, Crank actually just felt if I make more gates right now, I might have a Colossus less, but I had more income for such a long time that I'm going to be able to have A, more units, and B, also more production during the fight because I have all those gates. And he read the situation super well.
Yeah, so many units there for Crank, and he does knock off Hwangsin.